Okay. Doug, can you hear us okay? I know you're driving, but
And muted.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, I've always wanted to meet you. Now I finally got a chance to do that with permission. But again, I
Oh,
want to welcome everyone to session two. And before we get started, just to preface our discussion today, we know that many of you listening and participating are working in the behavioral health field and maybe working with relatives, clients, patients uh, that where it involves engaging them in that process from the very first time you meet with them for a consultation or an assessment or evaluation or screener, all the way through that continuum to continuing care settings and follow-up care. So we want to really see that idea of engagement as we talk today um, uh, play out throughout this continuum of care. And Doug, I don't know if there is anything that uh, you or Wakiyan wanted to review a little bit about session one, or if our viewers who were here with us for session one had anything that they had thought about since last week that they wanted to share or comment on. But that's a review of session one from last week.
I'll go a little bit. Um, First, I want to thank Wakiyan for that prayer and song. Wopala Chucha. That one of the uh, things that really hit. I mean, I was getting a lot of questions and different stuff about that video we played uh, on Andrew. Um, So, but I can go down the list here a little bit. One of the things is that taking a look at that boarding school and where we're coming from. Um, Going through all that trauma, um, and something to consider. As I was saying in the last, we view our clients as relatives because that's what they are. Um, but they'll come in and they know how to manipulate other counselors, especially the new ones. Um, and so that's to take in consideration also. I'll give you an example. There was um, I had this young individual that went, a guy from the state office came, um, and he needed an assessment. So we got him signed up, and the guy was done. But yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours later, and the guy comes out and he says, "Well, Mr. Widow," he said, "we can't find anything, um, that says he's got any addiction or anything like that." So, um, leaving, I was kind of upset, and so I found somebody that kind of knows the culture and did an assessment there. And when that one was done, um, by the time I went to go pick this individual up, they already signed him up at a treatment center. And so it's that way too. Our relatives, if they sense they could manipulate you, that will take place. And it's usually, you know, sad to say, but the non-natives, um, until they create that pattern. Um, and then the other thing I wanted to touch base on with that guy, we showed that video. A lot of people made a connection um, with that video. Is very touching with Andrew. Um, so a lot of people have that with that language, and struggling to be in mainstream society. Um, and so when working with our relatives, one of the things that really come to mind is that you know we're still looked at as uh, you know incompetent to um, sell our land or you know so that's why the government um, has that over us, and we're still looked at that way. And so a lot of us go through life um, dealing with stuff like that. And then at the same time, walking into Walmart, um, as you're coming out, I'm pretty sure that happens to a lot of people, but mostly natives, they'll stop and check your receipt. And so we have all those, so it's almost like an everyday thing uh, that we go through, and yet required to come in to do an eval. One of the, as far as engagement's concerned, you know, back when I was in treatment, over 30 some years ago, I don't remember that day too much. I don't remember what I ate, didn't know what I was wearing, but I do remember this counselor. He says, "What's a great guy like you doing in a place like this?" You know, and today I still remember that, and it's and trying to believe in myself. Somebody else that can believe in me. You know, why shouldn't I believe in myself? So being good to our relatives when they come in, to say something real positive. In the language, they say, "Ushliki cha, oki cha umpo," to have compassion for each other and love each other. Um, our ancestors viewed in service that obligation as a duty, to serve each other and welcome each other and accept and appreciate our heritage. Reminds us to serve each other, and so I'll say that much. And maybe somebody has a question or from the last session, and we can open that up. Or if somebody wants to comment what I said, or
Yeah, Erica makes a nice comment, Doug, in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but and Nora as well. There's some couple of good chats that have come in, and you guys can feel free to unmute yourselves or but we'd love to hear from you. Erica says we are all relatives. The two-legged, the four-legged, our plant relatives, all of Creator's creations. And Nora says, yes, that happened to me before. I knew it was too good to be true, but that was before I received supporting documents of arrest and alcohol history. Of course, we have the disclaimer that assessment is based on information provided to us in the assessment.
Yes, and the 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 animals, the fish, in our language, there's no such thing as animal. It's all a church by belong to a family, and so even them, they grieve also. Um, but that's some of the things that we don't take a look at. But each one of them, they grieve too, just like we do. And we don't put ourselves any higher than the animals. As a matter of fact, we all the stuff that we learned is from them, and it's awesome. Thank you for making that comment.
Doug, Rick was asking when that counselor said, "What's a great guy like you doing in a place like this?" Did you take that in a good way or a negative way?
Well, that's the thing with everything, I took it in a good way, and like I said, I don't remember too much, but I remember what that counselor said, and I took it as, he saw something in me that I had to believe in myself
Hmm.
and become that better person. Um, and I've been sober since. So,
Hmm. And Amy asks a question too about you mentioned the manipulation. She says, I was wondering if people who seem manipulative are actually working very hard to get their needs met. Maybe in this case, if they are not sharing information with a counselor, it is coming from a need not to feel shame.
I for some reason I couldn't pull it up or see it, but like getting the needs met and stuff. It's like what I was getting at is, see, we have a in our facility we have a native program, and then we have a mental health program. And the mental health program, that's where all of them are licensed and fully credentialed and doctors and all that good stuff. Um, and so when they come in and they have to do an assessment or whatever, whether it's alcohol or mental health, they'll go over there and they'll do their thing over there to try to minimize their use. Um, and so their needs are not being met. But once they come over to our side, and the one of the flags that I used to get is, as a substance abuse counselor, they say you can't meet with them with the mental health. But culturally, you know, a long time ago, we took care of our relatives' mental health as well. And they didn't have a doctorate degree and so, but we kind of knew, just like what Wakiyan was saying, that song, to call their spirit back. That's one of them. That's one of the mental health things, is calling their spirit back. And 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 you know, by being told, hey, you can't do this or you can't do that, you know, just like a suicide. If there's a suicide going on, you know, they're not going to call those people that's numbers up. They're going to call who they trust. And it's sad to say, but that's how it is in Indian country. Um, so I don't know if I answered that question properly, but
Wakiyan, any comments or thoughts? Looks like Erica has raised her hand, but I wanted to check in with Wakiyan to see if he had any thoughts about what we're speaking on.
Well, I was didn't get to sit in on the other one, but just on the planning. Well, yeah, just through where I was helping at last week, there was a lot of all of this going on through the Wachi, and being a singer and being part of that, depended on to listen to what they're asking, those that are leading the dance and the prayers, and to pick appropriate songs in the language to share. And so there's a lot of this going on with grief, trauma, and loss, as people were acknowledging that, and their loss of loved ones through COVID, suicide, car wrecks, unresolved murders, and just loss in general. There were so many deaths, one upon the other, that a lot of them didn't know how to take it layer by layer. They wanted it all done in one shot there. And even some of the dancers, they wanted to give their pain through piercing and dancing hard. But a lot of them were thinking of the people first. So they were trying to encourage them to remember you're a human also, and you're going through this with your relatives. So sometimes help for the helper, or healing for the healers, the self-care, that we get kind of caught up in that cultural awareness or sensitivity, that we're to take ourselves out of the picture in that circle and think of only the people that are there. And so a lot of them did that, and they still felt, I didn't get this resolved at the end of the dance, and they were tired. And so the cultural awareness was that they were taught that you put yourself last in a sense, but also in another sense, you're in the circle to be strong, and just the sensitivity of all the senses come alive there, and the self-regulation. And it's a hard thing to say that there's young men, even women now, that are into the piercing, which is a good thing when they pray with it right. But in the other sense, it's almost to where they become almost in that sense of being a cutter, and releasing pain through piercing. If you're not aware of those kind of things that they do at Sundance, there's some that are doing it up to 5 times in one summer, and 3 times, and not dancing all the way through. So it became, in our field here, if you're behavioral health, that I have to look at both sides and say, now, is this just about pain and release of trying to get some kind of feeling? Or is it more about receiving hurt? So that, and a lot of them just going down the list, the lot of talk about the boarding schools. Well, nobody taught us this. All we knew is to line up. So a lot of military men and women were saying, well, it's been third, fourth generation. All we know is our English language, and Lakota in our area is our second language. And so more linear thinking than anything, and not too much holistic. And so a lot of them that were out on relocation programs from our area, and now they're our great grandchildren are coming back to look for their ways and relatives. And what a big difference in the dynamics of their cultural understanding is that for our area, the dynamics of those that have their first language and their first thought process is Lakota, and then the bicultural, where they know maybe their grandparents or someone in their home has taught them the Lakota language, but they don't feel confident enough to use their language among their peers in their younger age. But their first thinking process is in Lakota, so they kind of get and when they get into the mainstream, all about the addiction is there in all fashion and forms. And so, and then the contemporary, what I spoke about, that when they may be tribal members, but they grew up off the reservation, either through being removed through DSS, the Department of Social Services, parents lost parental rights, or they're in a generation, well, we're just going to send you to boarding school because that'll help you to get your foot in the world. And now we have that contemporary where some don't even want to acknowledge their own culture or the culture of the people they're enrolled with in their tribe. And the fourth one that was added, the talk of like a pseudo culture, where they're drawing from the social media, the social impact of all denominations or religions or belief systems worldwide. So we have young people here that are already saying that, well, I believe in the Islamic way. I have some Zen through martial arts. I'm just beginning to learn about my Lakota ways and more about the mainstream ways, and then the culture of addiction. So they feel a little disorientated on what they need to work on early in the process of where do I start, and wanting to cure everything and to get lost in that treatment area, but trying to how they say, using the faith-based models of religion, Christianity, however, and the 12-step, and then also their own cultural ways, like in our area, the Lakowi Chocha, but they don't know where to fit in that, where they belong in within our own society in our area. So that's kind of just an overview of when this was planning. And like I said, I was out busy and fulfilling one of my roles that's our people here, or my relatives here. And then we're lucky our tribe allows us to use our own give us administrative leave to go and tend our own cultural ways, which is great, because before you have to depend on a lot of people quit their job to go take part in their cultural ways. And some would borrow leave, use leave, or just say, well, hopefully I have a job when I get back. So that's about it in an overview of that first page. Thank you.
Erica, did you want to say something? I see you still have your hand raised. Thank you, Wakiyan.
Can you hear me? Tanake, everybody. So I'm Erica Pursley, and our tribe is the Catawba Nation. So we are the only federally recognized tribe in South Carolina. And so speaking from our perspective here, we are less than 4,000 tribal citizens. And a lot of what I think really plays a role here when you look at the influence of segregation and racism, and how at a time when here in the South that was so prevalent that Native Americans here in this state and in the South were subject to a lot of the same things that our African American brothers and sisters were. But just in general, as we're all aware, there has for a very long time been a lot of miseducation. If your children are in the public school system, negative and very stereotypical portrayals of Indigenous people in, movies, cartoons, newspaper advertisements, and all of those things. So I think a lot of those things play a big part in why some people in the younger generation don't identify as strongly, especially if they don't live their whole lives on the reservation and they aren't very deeply immersed in their culture. But then too, for us, we lost our federal recognition for over 30 years due to many things in this state, illegal land claim settlements and other, political impacts. We did not regain it until 1993. But also our tribe was no stranger to the boarding schools. We had many of our children taken from their homes, and one of my direct ancestors sadly lost his life there. And a lot of people ask the question about, well, why does something that happened so long ago still affect people so profoundly today? And just that epigenetic and the other things that us that work in this field are aware of. It's not 7 generations, it can be as many as 13. But these things still haven't ended for a lot of families and tribes, including ours. We worked last year with the Army Corps of Engineers to try to reclaim the remains of that ancestor and bring him back here to be properly laid to rest. Sent family members there to be DNA matched and everything, only to find out that the remains were not even his. They were the remains of a 13-year-old female. So they didn't even respect the lives of our relatives in death. And, so that's just one of the ways that it still affects us to this day. But then too, with us only having an IOP program here on our reservation right now, we have to refer out for stabilization and MAT and PHP levels of care. And there's, we make up less than 5% of the total U.S. population as a whole. So if it's not a tribally based program, or a program on a reservation, or one where they work with a high level of Indigenous population, which is definitely the case here, a lot of times they know nothing about what we're even talking about. They don't know anything about forced assimilation. They don't know anything about boarding schools, intergenerational and historic trauma. And we had an incident a few months back where we sent a young man to a facility. Literally all he had was his prayer ties that myself and another family member made for him the day before he left, and prayed over and smudged and everything, and the clothes on his back. And when he got there, they opened them and tore them apart to see what was inside of them, without not even realizing what it was they were truly doing. And we were made aware of this. And, we could have responded in one of two ways. We could have been very angry, but I took it as an opportunity to educate these people about things that they were not aware of. And I said, you took this person's blessing from them when you did that, but also you made a very negative response when you told this young man that if the medication didn't come in a bottle and it didn't have a label on it, that it wasn't medicine. I said, and the reality is that is so far from the truth, because in our culture, we know that the Creator gave us everything that we need to sustain and to heal ourselves in our natural plants and medicines, and that the ways of man and this modern age has destroyed many of those things. I truly believe that the Creator gave us everything that we need for any illness or any issue that we face. So I just think that that's a lot of what is really important, is that in all places. So anytime that we go off of the reservation for things at the state level or nationally, whether they're indigenous based or not, we wear our ribbon skirts, we wear our beadwork. If we have the opportunity to drum or to sing or to do any of those things, we're just always making a point that we show them how we truly are. And we're very fortunate with our IOP program here and everything that we do, that we're able to incorporate our culture into everything we do. We do traditional meals, we do smudging, and if you look at Catawba history, we're known as being potters, and our pottery traditions are one of the oldest in the entire United States. And we still dig from the same clay holes today that our ancestors did over 6,000 years ago. But now more than ever, it's not a bad time to be Indigenous anymore. It's time for us all to come together as brothers and sisters and advocate. Advocate for our culture, advocate for our spirituality. And the reality is, that's for everyone. That's not just for us, because the medicine wheel says that regardless of what color we are, we're all connected. We're all the Creator's children, and everyone has a culture. You don't have to be Indigenous to have a culture, to have something to believe in. But I think that what we all know, and that we hope that our people that we help will come to realize, is that what it is that's truly missing in their life is that spiritual connection, that connection to the Creator, because that's where the real healing and recovery is. And it's funny that all of these new modern evidence-based practices that I've seen in several of these different outlets are things that our ancestors have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. And it's like, we've been trying to tell you this all along. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say. But I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you in this space.
I'll respond to that. It's with that trauma piece, it's not so much what happened to us, it's what happened to us inside of us. And so with the trauma piece, we're waiting for someone to come and save us. And so as we're waiting, in our IOP program, what we do is we let them know that nobody's coming, that we have to save ourselves. That's why that calling of the spirit back to reconnect yourself, not only with culture, yourself, your family, your children, other people. That's very important. And so the IOP programs, and just like what you said, our ancestors been doing that for years, and it worked. And so what we do as a church, by that's as a family, that's what is keeping us going. So an example is, if our immediate family isn't healthy, then our ancestor created that hunkapi to make a relative with somebody that is healthy, so that that they would help you and support you rather than tear you down like the mainstream society does. And so that's awesome.
Doug, Wakiyan, do we want to try and show that video of Andrew Windy Boy now?
Go ahead, because most of them probably missed it, but in that first part, he was sharing that his abuse in the boarding school, and this is a follow-up of where he's at today.
Let's see if I can.
Stand by, second song.
If you are concerned about bleeding gums or tooth pain, you must see the dental healing candy in action. This breakthrough
Sorry about the ad in there. Okay, I'm going to get that main screen back up.
Maybe should have asked, did anybody see the first part to that?
Yeah, You know, there were several of you on now that saw the interview with this gentleman where he recounted his experiences in the boarding school. Doug and I and Wakiyan spoke about this. We thought it was important to show him dancing and part of the healing for him. Yeah, Shalene, I can put the link to that in the chat box. If you type in Andrew Windy Boy interview, you'll get a hit on that too in YouTube. Okay, I'm gonna try and get that art. Doug, I just put up the screen. Wakiyan and Doug, I put the screen up just reviewing some of our objectives again, just the things to keep in mind as we go through and move through our discussion points today. And then also leading into session 2, asking yourself again as you participate and listen to Wakiyan and Doug share, asking yourself these questions about engagement. What does it mean? Why is it important? And when should it happen? Doug, did you want to try and should we try a meditation, or should we keep moving into session 2 and have you and Wakiyan touch on some of the topics? Whatever you're comfortable with.
I'm not at my desk, so I don't feel comfortable.
That's fine. That's fine. We can move into the topics, some of the topics for session 2 today, and open the floor to both you and Wakiyan to speak to these, and then also we encourage the audience to use the chat feature, the hand raise feature, or just unmute and join the conversation. So I'll move into the next slide, and these were these 3 or these 4 points were taken from our notes during our planning calls, and just thought I would open the floor to both our presenters to touch on some of these and how they relate to engaging with our relatives during that treatment process and beyond.
I think that blood quantum, is not only an issue, but it affects our people, our relatives, in a way that, to me, from what I've seen, our experience is that it's almost a mental health issue, because if you're not accepted in the non-native culture, and so then you kind of try to hang out in the native culture, and if you're not accepted there either, you don't have that sense of belonging. And then on top of that, I've seen some that had very little native blood, be fluent speakers, and they're more you know how a native should be. They have more compassion, and it's because of to me it's because of the abuse and the whatever they went through, you know, and they, you know, they don't want to have other people feel what they went through. And so, and then there's a flip side to that too. As Native people, we start to, you know, do that to each other. There's a clique here and there's a clique over there. If you're not in that clique, then, you know, you don't belong. Um, and not to shift gears or anything, but when they're sun dancing and like Wakiyan was talking about, when they get cut and pierce and break, you know, to really take a look at that. You know, as soon as somebody breaks, you know, if you're dancing for 3 days and somebody breaks, you know, that first person that breaks, you know, that everybody, that whole everybody that's dancing gets a jolt of energy, you know, and that's from, and then what that causes is being made new again. And same way with, you know, I don't like to refer to things as sweat lodge, you know, because that is what in our language it's called be made new again within. Um, and so, you know, we have to kind of change our mindset with that too, because it has a deeper meaning than what we see on the surface. And so that blood quantum, you know, there's people out there that you know, have a little bit of Indian blood in them, but you know, man, they treat you good. You know, they help you. All those things. They learn the language. So I'll see if Joaquin would respond to that one too.
Yeah, the blood quantum is most of our relatives. Even though I had a nephew say, Lexi or uncle, I'm a full-blooded brown European thinking native. So I don't know my culture. He said, I always hear this talk of you only got 1/64th of Lakota blood in you. And so on those that say they're 4/4, he's one of them that wasn't raised this way. So it was an issue even for him as a 4/4 that I'm less than because I don't know my language, my culture. Became a stereotypical alcoholic. So he was always saying, I don't know what the big deal is about that quantum, because those again, what was already shared, that they have it's all about the heart, and so I often share that too when I'm out in the field, that because I had a lot of even stereotypical when they come into our agency, and just because of the way I dress and carry myself and just take part in some of our Lakota ceremonies. But I also say, well, I was first taught to learn how to become in training to be an addict and alcoholic, and I went among the religious where they shipped us out. And so my first teaching in the culture and blood quantum had nothing to do with it, but I was in a community of being the only native and had to dang near fight every other day as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, like, you know, my mother said, I don't have to go over there anymore. So they made it there. And when I come home, it wasn't about blood quantum. They knew where I came from and my parents and grandparents, and they were all fluent in the language. And not too many engaged in the culture. But even blood quantum there didn't. Because they would say, oh, you're acting like a white boy, you're talking like a white boy. So I didn't know it set me apart by becoming a little bit more educated in the mainstream way. But at the same time, there was, how much blood do you have in here? 7/8, 3/4? I said, gee, I don't even know that. It was an issue, but it wasn't an issue. But when come into treatment, it's became less of an issue. But at the same time, it's just miscommunication between our own relatives in this realm of behavioral health that it became an issue. I don't know if that kind of sums it up, just kind of jumping back and forth. So with that, I'll say, okay, that's my point on, or for today. Sorry, I muted myself.
I don't know if we have some comments about that from the audience, or there's a couple of other bullet points up for Wakiyan and Doug to consider that we were hoping to address and discuss how it may impact how one engages with a relative. What about the notion that men don't cry or show pain or aren't supposed to ask for help? I know that came up in the discussion with both of you in our planning.
I'll talk a little bit about that. In the language, you know, from the boarding school, the language, it kind of changed, and so they would say, like, an example is like with the children, they would say, "Hena yokshicha chayashni." They would say, "Don't be making your children sad." And so, like in September, I lost my spouse, and you know, it's coming up on a year, but it's still difficult. And one day, you know, we were home last week. You know, I was having a tough day, and came home and I started supper, and you know, I was missing. You get sad when the sun's starting to set. And anyway, so I was crying, and you know, my little guy, he grabs some sage and lights it, and I knew that was my cue, you know, to pray. And so, you know, after I cried, you know, my kids came and hugged me, and you know, we smudged and we prayed and we ate. You know, so in the language they would say, don't let your kids feel that, you know. But it's the opposite when they feel it. And just like with men, you know, so I showed my children that it's okay, you know, it's okay to cry. And that doesn't mean I'm weak, or you know, and we could cry and then wipe our tears and continue the spiritual battle, or continue going, you know. But that's the thing, you know, a lot of them go to, especially the military, you know, at a young age, they're taught not to cry, and they go into military, and they turn that killing machine on, and the government doesn't turn it off. And so when they come home, then we deal with them. We help them with that. And we usually tell them it's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay to cry, you know. And if you don't cry and keep pushing it down, that creates a lot of health issues, you know, with heart condition, cancer, you know, whatever. And so I'll say about that much.
Yes, for our family, that's well, all we heard. Short phrase, they always heard it on the street and among relatives, men in our family. Just Cheshnyo, don't cry about anything. And so we had a lot of horsemen in our Tioshpai. They were bronc riders and worked cattle when they brought all those. And I had an uncle who would have rather been in a wheelchair than go get his leg fixed. And so they always said, "Cowboy up." And then when they drink, and those that weren't cowboys or in that area, and they'd say, "Warrior up," or "Lakota up." So that's how when I went to mainstream and out among where I shared being a foster child out there, and they had a program called the Mormon Indian Placement Program where you were sent out for 9 months out of the year from the family. Anyway, over there I was allowed in a sense, but not too much, because that was the mainstream in their thought process with the macho man and military men and hard-working farming families and things like that. So it was basically even there that, you know, men were always above the women. So I seen it where it came from. I didn't know I was being shown that when the men were abusing the women in our communities under the influence, and some of them weren't under the influence. It was just men dominate women. It's just we were taught to be a really unhealthy man. And so when it got into recovery and in our Kota ways, and that's when I was able to, but even that was hard, because in the back of my mind when I was being taught by my grandfather saying that, how are you going to show your children to be compassionate for others if you can't show it for yourself and your relatives who have made their journey? And so that's what we would have to, again, sharing that. And when all the deaths in our family and the Tioshpa, even up to this past week, losing more relatives to addiction. And I don't even know if we can say natural death, because most of them were complications that they just had to live with in recovery when they end stage cirrhosis, when they stopped and extend their life for 20, 30 more years. But they're always having to deal with that of disparities that come with not taking care of themselves as men. So that really was true for a sense, and it still is, because I still have men coming in, and they'd say that even when we go ceremony and stuff, yeah, don't go over there because they like to cry around, and that's not manly. You got to warrior up. They had a different in our family, it was military men where they'd say airborne ranger, marine, even when the cowboys that ever started wearing hats and boots, as they always say, well, you got to be a cowboy. There was no individuality to say, I'm just a Lakota Wichasha, just a native man, a common man that can learn to live in this world. And that wasn't allowable. You had to fit into, when it came into early in my life, when my family was, my brothers were my role models. So, and even my cousins, some of them were going to prison, and they were saying, well, that's a rites of passage that you're going to juvie. you're going to jail, some are gonna go to state and federal pen, you're going to the military, might go to war. So I was taught how to be dysfunctional without knowing that, and took it on as a lifestyle that's just how it was. So with that, we're right now pressed for time, but that's mine in a short scenario.
A couple of other points that had come up during discussions related to engagement. One was having relatives that were coming back into the community from institutional settings. And then the other was this idea of mainstream thinking versus native thinking and some of the double standards that can be there when engaging with your relatives as they enter treatment or continue in the treatment process. So I don't know, we've got we don't have a lot of time, guys, but I thought, at least commenting on both of these as well, how they relate to engagement, things to consider when engaging relatives.
I'd talk a little bit about that. Majority of the people that I've helped or gain their trust, because that's what it's all about, is getting connected with them, gaining their trust. There's a lot of them that went to prison, and the ones that I couldn't help were probably my own family. But those ones that were in there, some were hardcore, been in there for 18, 20 years. So what happens there is when they get out, they anticipate getting out, and then they get out and they leave their nahi in there. They leave their spirit in that cell, or in that maybe they were in solitary, or got left in there, and so they come back and they're going through life, but they're disconnected. So what I usually do is I would help them, and it all depends on if they're ready. I'll teach them how to call their own spirit back. And you have to remember that since we're natives, that there's, like Wakiyan talks about, there's that linear side and that holistic side. And so we can't carry the language and whatever from our left side over to the ceremonies and those kind of things, because it doesn't fit. And you really take a look at that, then you get these guys coming in that need a eval or whatever, and if you're sitting behind your desk asking questions, just be considerate and say, hey, because of funding or whatever, I have to put these stuff in the computer, so that way they don't feel that whatever they're doing is more important than they are, because that's all they're looking for. They're looking for that connection of who they can trust. And so that's really important, to be able to gain their trust. And so if you're having a bad day and somebody's coming in, and we can't look at all of them the same, because each one is different. And today, our children, grandchildren, as somebody was saying earlier, what about them? And they'll be, as in the prophecies, they told that, our seventh generation, our children are going to be doing things, that are unheard of, and as far as helping, healing others, stuff like that. And so those are coming to us today. And so we need to, be considerate and have that mawshila, have that compassion, um, versus, I saw people, not not to cut down certain people at IHS, but you just become a number after a while. But be compassionate of who we serve, love who we serve, and that's what it's all about is our people. But don't forget to put yourself, to take care of yourself. Boundaries are good, and limitations, and those are need to be there too. And so we probably got about a couple more minutes, but I got to get going. I'm pretty close to where my destination is, and I'm almost there. It's awesome. I see my Hunka relative on Debris. Good to see you. Uh, and other people, and it was a great session. These are the things that we need to help each other with. And so thank you for putting this on. Iowa, we need this kind of stuff to support each other, help each other. So thank you too, Steve and Wakiyan. It's good to see you. Wananifshala.
See you, Doug. We've got a few minutes left. Wakiyan, I didn't know if you had some thoughts, maybe in closing, some considerations or things that maybe have helped you engage with relatives, during your experiences in meeting with them for services, connected to these bullet points, or just anything maybe in closing to leave us with.
Yeah, just like the probably 99% of our referrals come from the legal system, from tribal courts to county courts, city courts, state courts, federal courts. And so I had to learn patience, because a lot of them just aren't ready when they're coming out.
Mm.
It's because I always heard that's a high stress area. They were already stressed and traumatized before they went in.
Mm.
And more so when they come out, that they're stuck in the yard, is what a lot of them will say. My mentality, I'm stuck in the yard.
Mm.
And a lot of color things. They went in there with colors, the gang colors, and came out with in a sense of a native well-being, that I'm as best as I can, because before I went in with the different cultures, belief system of the gangs.
Mm.
Now more of a societal, but at the same time, it's close to a decade, depending on what kind of drug that they're using, and mainly alcohol still king here. And so I have to really be patient that, okay, this didn't work. They're going to go back out, and then just to let them go where they're at is what I heard. And it is, so 5 years, it's like they hit the halfway point. And I'm in my 29th year of working for our tribe here and our program. And we introduced the holistic of spirit, the mental, the physical, and the emotional, which is a big for us here because it was always just when they would come from the outside, they'd say, well, those modalities are going to work better than ours, as well. We didn't even know our modalities as Lakotas, the natural process of healing. So now, even though we're under, they call us 638, PL 638, took back our own services from the government under the IHS. There is a chapter 18 for substance use that addresses you to give a choice of your own natural ways. Here would be Lakota, and also the mainstream ways, to incorporate them or give a choice or blend them. And it was just brought up today in our agency, and I said, oh, so it took me a while for those that the staff that come into our area, they're catching it now. So that's really good, because the institutional settings are really tough to deal with. And because the mainstream thinking says in our area, white is right. And then it became anything else other than Lakota mainstream thinking is the right way. The native thinking double standards among our own people also said, well, I'm educated and you're not, but yet at the same time, you don't get a master's or doctorate or PhD in your own culture and your own native ways. Even then, and I've had this incident where master's level relatives come back, and I'd always tell them what I was told to me: don't get lost out there, don't get lost in all that. But they did, because they had a more saturated belief system, and came down to where without them even, maybe they had some Caucasian blood or European, they came back with even that thought process, I'm more than, and today they describe it as a, what do you call it, white privilege thinking. So we have that even among our own people that are educated, and then the other side, the cultural, that I'm more Lakota than you because I know my language and I know the culture, the ceremonies. So those standards, even as they say, oppressed become the oppressor. So in wrapping up, and we're short here, but that's it in just a short. These are some long sessions if we had them all day, all week. Anyway, thank you for your time, and glad I got to sit in on this one and help out. Wopilalo Ichichapu, give you a great heartfelt thanks for attending today.
Yes, thank you so much, Wakiyan. Wopila Yeo. I appreciate you being able to take the time to be with us, and for everyone to stay with us as long as you could today. We are going to broadcast again next Monday, same time. Let's see if I can get that slide up. And Wakiyan is right. We could just, I could absorb this knowledge and wisdom from these two gentlemen all day. We really could do an all-day workshop. Appreciate everyone staying on. The comments in the chat have been wonderful. We hope to see you again next Monday. And hopefully I can talk Doug and Wakiyan into coming back and sharing more with us. We'll have some more bullet points to touch on related to engagement and how it may impact the way you connect with those that you're working with. That's our real hope, is that we can have that dialogue. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Doug. And that should be .com, not .co. So I need to fix that. But there are our contacts, and feel free to reach out to us with any comments or questions. I did post a link to our YouTube archive. It's got all of our recorded events there. We'll plan to see everyone next Monday around the same time, 2 to 3:30 Central. Takias, appreciate you very much, Wakiyan, for being on today, and everyone for staying with us. We'll see you again next Monday, if not before. Until then, please, everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay connected. We'll see you again. Take care, everyone.
Oh.
Sok siya, okay.